Canik Rival S is out. We've got one in for review, and in this tabletop video we'll be taking a look at the box. What comes in the box? What's different about this gun? Taking a look at the manual. We'll go over basic fit, features, and function. We'll do a chamber fitment check. I'll show you how to field strip it, put it back together, and tell you what we're going to do with it when we get to the range. All that coming up next on GBGuns. This release is pretty huge for Canik, and appropriately so. It's in a pretty huge case. This is a one of those airtight, waterproof, I believe, type cases that actually has the eyelets for locking, quite possibly TSA approved way to transport your gun. Why does that matter for something like this? Well, this is a competition gun, and those who compete seriously travel for it. So nice to have that case. If you don't travel, you don't compete, still a pretty cool case. Open it up, and yes, I already have handled this a little bit. I spent about 5 minutes with it at the shop when I picked it up, raced home, and now here we are live on video discovering this together. Pretty cool presentation. You can see right off the bat, gun, 2 other back straps, and these back straps wrap around on the 3 sides, so they are going to quite possibly significantly change the way the gun feels in hand. We have the magwell, like we know from the Mete line, 2 different metal base plates for the magazines, 2 magazines included. This tool, and yes, it is a tool. You can see it's got a driver on the end there, and inside are all of your bits and screws needed for the optics mounting. Just a pretty handy device. See the cutouts here? This lifts up out of the way. Get that hefty guy out of there. And down below, we've got some additional leftover cutout space, which if you're going to use this as your range box is not a bad thing. It means you got room for things. Additionally, the cutout of the foam above the pistol has room for an optic. And in here you can see we've got mag loader, an included holster, and these holsters are actually quite decent. They've done away with any of the locking type. It's got a nice open cut competition style for an optics ready, and adjustable size wise here for different belt widths. Mag loader, we have the different optics plates in here, which are numbered. I'm assuming the manual is going to tell us which one for which optic, if you can't just find the holes that match. And you can see it's threaded for that Canik classic charging handle style of being able to rack the gun. We have a punch. Bring this out of here. It's actually a rather beefy, nicely made tool. This is for driving out the pins on your Rival S, because just like the Mete line, this is a very user service friendly gun for stripping. We won't take it that far apart. We'll just do the basic field strip, but it's nice to know it's there. A plastic cleaning rod, and then we've got our brush. Lifting up one more level reveals the bottom of the case. So no manual down in there. Up top is an interesting placard. Bragging point if I get the glare off of it and zoom in. I have not read this yet myself. Like I said, I just got this thing in. And see if I can kill the lighting and make it easier to read. There we go. Explains a bit about the steel forging process, and a little more on that when we get into actually taking a look at the gun. The SFx Rival S is effectively what I'm going to call a 5th generation of the SFx line of guns. Now I've got 3 other generations here, the SFx Rival, the original, the Mete SFx, and an old school SFx. The only one we're missing is the Mete Pro, which I think fits kind of between here, but is essentially the same as the Rival. As far as I know, I haven't handled one. There aren't a whole lot of them floating around out there, so sorry about that. If you're curious about the differences between here and where the evolution has been and how these guns have changed, got an article about that over on gbgunsdepot.com that outlines not just the SFXs, but all of the generations or generational changes that I have seen and noticed in the Caniks that is making them a part of what's so darn popular today. Now, as far as current gen, the biggest difference, of course, between the S and the original SFx rival is that this has a polymer frame and this has a forged steel frame. That's adding a whole lot of weight. And if you don't like the chrome, I hear you. I personally like it on a gun like this. This is a competition gun. Why not show off? They do have an all black version. Sorry about that mirror polish on those spots. I love it, but I can see how it's causing some glare for the camera. So anyways, why the weight? What's the point of it? Well, what a lot of folks have done is have swapped to brass back straps on their competition guns, looking for more weight that is not reciprocating. That is frame and below, because the heavier that is, the feeling, the sensation is that the gun is steadier, just kind of anchors differently. Now my friend David the Humble Marksman has some interesting theories and quite a bit of experience talking about moving fast versus moving slow, how the weight of the gun changes your ability to transition and get on target. I recommend checking out his videos if you want to hear from a competitive shooter, one version of it or take on it. Me personally, I remember in other guns that have come out with steel frames, I just enjoyed the way it just kind of anchors in the hand, sits down low, nice and deep. Working with steel also gives the opportunity to have some changes, it kind of forces some changes in how the thing is shaped and made based on machining capabilities versus injection molding in plastic into molds. What's different on this? Not as big of a difference as, say, like when the Walther steel frame came out, that was a completely different frame. There are, however, some differences in the mechanics of the gun, and that's demonstratable. I'm not going to do it right here on camera, but you cannot fit this slide on this frame and vice versa. They're not swappable. So you've got to go with the steel or go with the polymer. Back to the weight question, how much difference of weight is there? Got a scale here and we'll take a look. Now my Mete SFX weight is going to be a little bit different because we've got the threaded barrel on here, and I do have an optic. This is the mechanic optic, however that's probably going to add combined at most say 2 ounces. I'll even take the thread protector off to be a little more fair. And yes, this thing's dirty because we've run this thing at courses. So what is the weight difference? Well, thread protector off, no magazine in, and an empty gun, but a longer barrel. We're looking at 1 pound and 10.5 ounces on the scale. Sorry about the glare of the camera there. That's just what happens when you have LEDs and lighting. I've even shut off some of my lights here in the studio to try to help that out. Now on the Rival S, clear gun, no mag in. We're looking at 2 pounds, 7.4 ounces. So a considerable difference in weight, and it should all be in our non-reciprocating down here in the frame mass. We'll weigh the slides to compare against each other real quick and see if there's any difference there. Slide from the SFX Rival polymer, however with an optic and a threaded barrel. 1 pound and 3.2 ounces. Rival S slide. 1 pound, 3 ounces. So to look at just the frame difference, polymer Rival with the magwell on there is 7.2 ounces. Rival S frame with the magwell installed, 1 pound, 4.3 ounces. So aside from weight, what are the handling changes that are going to be about the gun, or what differences are there? Looking at the slides, everything appears pretty much the same as the SFX Rival. It's when you get to the frame that things are different, obviously. So we have a traction pad here that is screwed on and is actually going through a part in the frame underneath. What that does, I don't quite know yet. Looking at the rail, we had 3 slots before, we have 4 slots now underneath. And underneath on the front of the trigger guard, because of its steel, this has a nice cross-hatched style texturing versus the horizontal lines for gripping, and you have the same thing on the front strap. Instead of the soft texture, it is a bit of a cross-hatch design on there. Magazine release, the 2 other sizes of magazine releases as well as their screws are inside that little tool that I showed you at the beginning, as is the hardware you need for the optics plates. And down here you notice that our grip panel is going to be different. Whereas on the polymer models, you're changing just the back strap. just this part here. Now you're changing the sides as well. And in pulling the two out, I can't show you removing these screws and sliding this off on YouTube. Unfortunately, they think that's gunsmithing. They are nicely labeled inside. That one is the large, and that is the medium. And lining them up, you can see that the large gives you, it's going to be hard to do with camera angles, but a little bigger hump on that side. As far as thickness, they appear to be the same thickness, so I don't know if they change on the sides. Before we do our shooting video, Miss Tia and I will go through these and find one that fits, and then in that video explain the differences in fitment and why we chose what we did. And now we can take a look at the gun as we normally would. Sorry for skipping over the manual, folks. I have an early copy. We first got to handle this, well, a few months ago at a special event my publisher held, and so that's why we've got our hands on one now. And don't have the manual yet, so we'll have to check on that. But anyways, you can see clear, and we'll take a look at the gun like we normally do. In fact, as I walk this back, first thing I noticed is it slides differently. I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's got a smoother feel to it. It's interesting. Having already taken the slide off and taken a look at the frame, etc., I don't see obvious differences that would lead to that, but it's got, aside from spring squeak, it has that kind of finished 1911 feel, which is really nice. Anyways, locking this open, we'll take a look at our magazine eject or release. They are 18 round magazines, marked Canik, and I believe Mech are on there. They look like the same 18 round magazines that have been used in all the Caniks, which is great because if you're like us, you have a few of them, and that means you've got more mags. So, do we have magazine release or ejection? Turning it upside down. Looks like a little bit of ejection, a little bit of kick to get it out there. Did notice there seems to be more space in the magazine well, and there have been grooves cut to lighten and maybe relieve, I don't know why they're there, but those would let debris fall, which is a nice feature. It feels like something that is going to, yeah. So this has a snugger, there's friction there. In fact, I don't have the magazine all the way in, as you can see, but friction is holding it in. But in going to steel, I'm able to change dimensions in there, go with a different thickness, and it does hold. I don't know, I can't explain it. It feels different, as it should, I guess. So that covers our magazine release. We've got an ambi slide lock and release. Does it release? It's stiff. Does not want to. Release is fine on that side. I'll try this again. Now, although I am left-handed, I have trained myself to shoot with my right, so I'm not as adept at using these. Yeah. Okay, it releases. It's just a bit stiff. Maybe it's something you got to learn the technique for. If you're a left-handed shooter, let me know what your experiences have been with things like that. But this did require a bit more force. Coming up to the muzzle, you see we've got a nice, nearly flush fit of the crown of the barrel with the end of the slide. And I do not see any target crowning. There might be a little bit of relief there, but not a ton. Got cut out here for access to get underneath. Also a little bit of weight reduction, reducing weight and reciprocating mass in the slide, that is, helps with recoil control quite a bit, makes guns feel smoother. You can see our extra rail space that we've got. We have texturing on the front of the trigger guard. So I had to pause there for a second because Miss Tia came in and wanted to remind me to let everyone know that she has shot one of these, but I didn't at that same event. Reason being, I had another assignment and other business to be doing with Century, so I only got to look at this thing, didn't get to shoot it. She shot it. Anyways, we have that double undercut that we first saw on the Metes, which is excellent for getting your support hand a little bit higher. It seems like it's not much, but it does make a difference in how the gun feels and how you can control recoil. You can see we've got a good radius here, nice and round and shiny, so you don't end up with Glock knuckle. Pretty darn smooth. Since we're here, we'll do our trigger talk. Now in trigger talk, I don't talk weight. That's because I've shot 10-pound triggers that were excellent and 3-pound and under triggers that were garbage. Feel is really what's important with triggers. You can see that we have a serrated broad safety on there. We've got a spring-loaded resistance up to the wall. Very crisp break, leaving the trigger at the 90 degree. And our reset gives you push. There's positive feedback for the shooter and takes you right back to the wall to shoot again. This is a potentially very fast trigger. If you guys were like me and played Diablo 2 back in the 90s, chances are you can shoot this thing pretty well. It's if you can double click a mouse, you can shoot this quick, is going to be my guess. Magazine release, as you can see, is nicely extended and out for competition use. If you want more or less extension, there are other options included in the box. And there is our checkering on the front. Of course, it's got a little bit of a peak to it, but not enough that it's going to chew up your hands, just enough that it grips. Much like you would find on a well-worn tool back when steel tools were made nicely and had that type of drilling on it. Magazine well, you can see nicely because of the color contrast here that we've got good flaring out of the box, and this additional magazine well that comes with it, as well as the hardware. What I like about these is it cups my hand. You can see how my pinky rests right up against there, and that makes it easy for me to apply pressure with my pinky and correct the altitude or the attitude of the nose of the gun while shooting. For my XXL hands, that's the effect it has. With smaller hands like Miss Tia's medium hands, she finds that her support hand, when she comes up, is able to thereby connect on the magazine well and provide control of the gun that way. So they, while shoving a single feed double stack magazine like this into a double stack body magwell is not a difficult thing that with training magwells really aren't needed as far as getting a mag into the gun. They serve a functional purpose beyond that of adding a little bit of control. I like that there's no big flare sticking out the backside here because really that's not necessary. And if you're like me and have large hands, if you've got a fleshy palm, when the magazine well sticks out real far here, it cuts in and digs in on the palm and makes you feel like you're holding a gun that's too small. This gun would do it, even with its 18-round magazine, but since they left it nice and smooth there, that is off. As far as slide to frame fitment, we didn't take a look at that earlier. Let's say our normal side to side and vertical up front. And the back, very tight. Nice and tight. We also have a striker indicator, as you can see. It's back. When it's cocked, it pops up. And this is the pre-charge striker setup, like coming on Walthers. And that when you're coming to the wall, you're just releasing it. You're not cocking and releasing it like on a lot of other striker platforms that tend to have that spongier trigger. It's part of how these guns have such a spectacular trigger. As far as sights, we've got blacked out rear and a fiber optic front. It is an adjustable target rear that is on this plate that comes off and is removed when you add an optic on there. And I want you to take a look at just how far down the slide this cut goes. That's probably going to set your optic pretty deep in there. Of course, you have a plate to put on there that'll add a little bit of height, but it's a nice deep cut on there. And that brings us around to the other side of the gun. I'll have to figure out what's going on with that slide release, why it's not so smooth. Next, we'll field strip the Rival S and take a look inside the gun. Field stripping the Rival S is fairly straightforward. We're going to check for clear. And we need to pull down on the takedown levers on both sides of the gun. Release the striker. I'm going to ease the slide back a little. That makes it easier to pull down the levers and forward, and then it comes off right there. It does not slide all the way off the front. With that out of the way, we can take a look inside. You can see that extra piece that goes in there that's being held on by this spot. I do like that they textured it though as a memory point for your finger and a traction point for your support side thumb. Nice, clean, same design that we've grown accustomed to from Canik. Taking a look inside of our slide. To drop our barrel, or pull the barrel out, we're going to apply pressure on the spring, down and out. And you can see we have a captured spring on. It is a steel rod. I had to verify because of the color. Tap down on the barrel, bring it down and out. It's our nice long barrel. And you can take a look in the slide. And the slide, when stripped, is fairly lightweight. That's a nice thing. That's going to help with shooting quite a bit. And this shows some dirt from the shipping grease and original test firing. You can even see they've cleared out enough all the way down to the holes that some of the optics are going to mount into. Next, for a barrel, we'll take a look at chamber support. Chamber fitment and support is important because if you're running high pressure round or have a case failure, the more support that is around the brass, the more force wants to go out the barrel and the less it wants to come into your hand. Do you have a polished feed ramp there? No chamfering around the leading edges there. That's kind of interesting. I've expected that. Drop the round in, we're listening for the sound, which is nice. Check that it can turn. And then we're looking to see how much of the brass is supported. And you can see we're all the way up to the webbing there. Nicely done, fully supported chamber. As far as running plus P, since people always ask, I don't know why you would need to in a barrel this length, but since I am without manual at the moment, I can't verify whether or not it is rated for that. I can say, however, that most Turkish manufacturers, Canik included, typically build around NATO spec ammunition. That's why some of the early Caniks had issues running on softer American ammo, especially if the shooter did not have the firmest of grip. The gun would short stroke. NATO spec 124 is 10% higher pressure than SAMI spec is. Plus P is also 10% higher. So if we can run NATO, it can generally run plus P. That's my rule of thumb. I am not an engineer, nor am I an attorney. So do with that as you will. As I struggle to get this reassembled. There we go. It rests a little short there. Yeah, it's supposed to. I'll talk about what we'll do in the range video when we get to the range, which might be a minute since we have SHOT Show coming up. And we're going to be busy with that. Miss T and I will take this out after deciding which of the backstrap fits us best. You'll see our absolute cold shots, true first impressions, first time shooting this gun, at least for me anyways. She shot it a few months ago. Then full magazine plus one to see how these magazines run when they're fully stuffed. We'll do our trademark what's for dinner test to see what it eats. Take it to the spinner for sights and trigger control, which should be excellent. That nice fine fiber optic up front and very crisp trigger. Then we'll do some practical accuracy groups, 5 shots from 7 yards, and give you the concluding thoughts of the two of us. If you're looking for specs or other information such as that, check GBGunsDepot.com. I will have an article up there with all of the information as well as a deeper dive on this beautiful pistol from Canik. Thanks for watching.